Hey guys, welcome to Risk-Based. Ever notice how your computer's getting slow? It's kind of a pain in the butt. It used to run fast, applications used to open fast, machine used to boot up quickly. Now it takes a long time, it takes 10 seconds, 20 seconds, maybe even over a minute for things to happen, which used to happen almost instantly. There's a couple ways and a couple things we can look at to kind of speed it up a little bit. Really what it is things get kind of clogged up in the back end of the system, kind of in the guts of the system. So we can look at a few things. There's some settings that we can change to make it a lot faster. Really what it boils down to is every once in a while you should really reinstall your machine. It's not as scary as it sounds. It's not as difficult as it sounds, but for now in this video series we're going to cover how to change some settings, maybe uninstall some applications, and some various places in Windows that we can speed up the machine. We'll get into virus scanning, malware scanning, and resetting the machine a little bit later. But for now, let's dive right into it. One of the next subjects we can talk about is startup. So when your computer starts up, what services are running, what programs kick off, and what you can do to speed up that process and kind of take advantage of the knowledge that you're gaining in this video to make your computer faster. So there's a couple of different places to check when it comes to startup. One of those places is MS Info 32. So if you hit the Windows key and R at the same time, it'll pop up this run box. So Windows R and MS Info 32 exe. And this tells you some nice things about your system. If you're 64-bit or 32-bit, if you're Windows, what version of Windows you are, and if you're Enterprise, Standard, Home, all that good stuff. And some other info about your hardware and where Windows is installed, etc., etc. One of the things you can look at is your tasks, running tasks, and to manipulate this stuff we're going to go to a different application, but this is good for just viewing and see if there's anything going on. And startup programs. So startup programs are one of the pieces of the puzzle when it comes to what your computer is exactly doing while you're starting up. The main thing your computer is doing is starting services. And if you hit services here and you look at the start mode, you can see auto. All these services have to kick on when your system boots up. And that's really bottom line is what takes time when your system's booting up, is all these services starting. Then once all the services start and you display your login screen, after you type your credentials, your username and password, then these kick off. So even as you're typing your username and password, those services are still starting. They're not just instant. These services may take a while here. So then, like I said, you log in and now you're starting more stuff on top of all those services running. So this can really bog down your system if you're not paying attention to what's going on inside your computer. So everything you install, applications and games and whatever else, even a cute little screensaver or even desktop background, there's some people that will install if you run an executable or you run some kind of installation with, say, a desktop background or a screensaver or something cute like that, that application, that executable, has rights to do anything at once on your system. The far majority are okay, some are not. Some are going to install malware and you're going to have an issue. And most of this other stuff, there's some hardware stuff here that's interesting. For those of us old schoolers, we're going to see this IRQ here and we're going to flinch a little bit, but that's another video. So after we take a look here and see the summary of what's going on, we're actually going to go to our task manager. So we'll right click on the bar here and we're going to go to task manager. And task manager shows us a whole bunch of stuff. So there's a lot going on in this task manager. It could almost be a separate video in of itself. What we were talking about before was startup. So again, here's services. This is how you can actually manipulate these services here. So if you notice, when we were in MS Info 32, we did not need to be administrator. We didn't need elevated rights to look at this because we're just looking. We're not able to modify anything. There's no right click and stop or start or modify, whatever. when we go into Task Manager, we have to have elevated rights. So with these elevated rights comes great responsibility, and that might be funny to say, but it's true. So there's a lot of these services that are strange, like what is all this stuff? So there are a lot of them that are part of the operating system you don't want to touch. Say, for instance, the audio server, that's your sound. Some of these are more obvious than others. Bluetooth, do you want Bluetooth running, that kind of thing. There's some description here. You can kind of look through here and see some descriptions, kind of maybe once you get used to it, you can see stuff that just doesn't sound right, like, what is that? I'm going to go look that up. But basically, you can take any of these, for instance, Adobe ARM service, and I can go to search here, type the service name in, and the internet is going to tell me a little bit about it. Here you go. It doesn't look too good. I'm not real happy with that. Component of Adobe Reader that belongs to Adobe Reader, that's a freeware tool, and something about capturing keyboard and mouse input. That is not good. What does it say? Able to record keyboard and mouse inputs. Yeah, so we're getting rid of that. So how do we do that? Again, we're starting with services here. These are the executables that become more than an executable, that are starting with the computer starting up. And we're going to do stop on this, and we're also going to do, it's not like open services. Yeah, we're going to go to open services because we want to do more than just stop. So in here, it looks like the only manipulation we can do, we can't go to details. All we can do is start and stop, or open services. We're going to want to open services, so sorry about that. So this will be our gateway. Our task manager is our gateway into the more guts of the machine. And this services list here is something that any tech person, any engineer will be used to, but for the normal user, this may be kind of intimidating, a little scary, but trust me, you don't have to worry too much about it. If you look at these services here and you go to do your search here like we just did and read about it first, you're going to be safe, you're going to be fine. So we're going to go here and we're going to change it to disabled. So in this drop down list, sorry, so I just double clicked. So we're going to double click on this and we're going to do disabled. And you notice here there's manual, automatic, or I'm sorry, automatic delayed start and automatic. We're going to do disabled. Some of these services we will be changing to delayed start because there's no reason to have them stepping on each other to start. So disabled, we're going to hit OK. Now, one of the things we can do here is we're going to do startup type. We're going to sort by startup type. So this Adobe Acrobat, we're currently sorting by alphabetical. Sorry, the word escaped me. We're sorting alphabetically here. We're going to sort by startup type. Now that means anything that's automatic or automatic delayed start is going to be at the top of the list here. See this? Got a lot of automatic delayed start. Some of these we need, some of these we don't. And depending on what you're doing with your computer, for instance, this is my virtual machine that I use to do any Windows applications that I have to do. So my base operating system is Linux, but I run this Windows machine and I want it to do very, very little. If I have an application that I need for work, I think my CRM software at work requires Windows or requires Internet Explorer, so I come in here for that. Other than that, I don't do too much with it. Your mileage may vary. You may want the computer, this may be your base computer. Most likely it's your base computer. Windows is your base computer, and you don't want to kind of stop necessarily the services and the executables that I want to stop. For instance, bits, you definitely want to keep running. You can read up on that. That does some good stuff. CCM, you're probably not going to have this. This is for automatic software distribution that my company uses. This is my VPN client. So there's some various things in here you're going to see that you may or may not have. Suffice it to say, I would get familiar with these, even if you're not very geeky. I would get familiar with some of these. There's some executables that you can definitely stop. For instance, if you have some kind of virtualized stuff running, virtualization software running in your machine, you can stop that if you're not doing any kind of virtualization, which means virtualization is my computer that you're looking at here, this client Windows 10. This is a virtual machine. So anyway, some of these are a little strange. Anytime I see these alphanumeric nomenclatures at the end of these service names here, I kind of pay attention to that, like what's going on there. But these are actually okay. For instance, this one, this underbar 4221, what is this? Is it really connected device platform? Would Microsoft as a company, would they name a service underbar 4221? Maybe. Probably not. This is something you would look into, connected devices platform user service. If you have this one, I would definitely look into that. And we're going to scroll down here a little bit. For instance, themes. We can definitely stop themes. And you might notice your background or your bar or your start menu or something like that change a little bit, but that's okay. Themes just makes things look pretty. I don't want that, you may. Up to you. And again, we just double click and we go to disable on some of these. So next we're going to look at, thought I saw some other stuff in here to look at. So here's that underbar 4221 again. I would have to look into that. I'm not sure what that is. So here we go again, 4221. That may be something, not nothing. So keeps your Google software up to date. This may be specifically for my Google Drive, although I didn't think I had Google Drive installed here. Oh, I do. Okay. So I'm going to get rid of that because I don't use Google Drive in a virtual machine for anything. I think I had that in there because of the last video that I did where I was doing some Google Drive stuff. Anyway, let's see. So Windows Search, if you are not doing a lot of file content, productivity, office productivity, in other words, maybe using Microsoft Word or some kind of Excel or whatever, where you're finding documents and looking around for documents and opening them and stuff like that, you can definitely disable searching and indexing. So we're going to stop search because I know I don't need that on this machine. So again, you can get into search either by right-click properties or you can just double-click. And we're going to disable that. And there's some more stuff to go down here. I would look at offline files if you're not using any kind of syncing. I would definitely disable that. And again, look through, your services are going to look a lot different than mine most likely because I do very, very, very little on this machine. Any normal Windows machine, say for instance, quote unquote normal, air quotes, any user's Windows machine is going to be a lot more clogged up than this. So again, check out your services online. For instance, Workstation, we're not disabling this or it kicks me off the machine. But some of these, if you look into them, you can change to even a delayed start. So not user profile service, but for an example, there are a lot of services that you're going to see if you look real closely. Microsoft Office click to run service. I don't want that. Give me a break. It's like they have people employed just to sit around and think of more stuff to put on our machines to make them slower. It's very aggravating. Anyway, so services are done. We're going to go back to Task Manager. I told you we could make an entire video out of Task Manager. Startup. So with Startup, I'm looking at the impact, the status, if it's enabled or disabled, and the name and publisher. That tells me what the application is for, who put it out. For instance, Skype here. I don't want Skype starting when I log in. Again, startup is when I'm logging in as my user. Services are when I'm just booting up the machine. Do I want Citrix connector to start up? No, I don't. Google Drive sync. Maybe I want that. If you're using Google Drive for cloud service for sync, you do want that. However, again, this machine, I don't want that. This is my virtual machine. VirtualBox Guest Edition, obviously I would keep that. That's going to help all the drivers and everything inside my operating system function a little bit better. So that's a general overview of Startup. Again, you're going to see a lot of stuff in here most likely. Any update service for instance, Adobe Acrobat Update Service or Office Update Service, whatever the case may be. Disable those and update them yourself once a month, whatever the case. I would leave stuff like antivirus and any spyware stuff, I would leave that enabled. And we're going to move to, let's see, processes and details. So this is your process list, but it's a lot more detail about your process list here, or different details, I should say, about your process list. So if I go to processes here, I sort by name, see apps and background services, background processes. Apps are what is actually running right now. So obviously Chrome is running, MMC, some systems management, system information, stuff is running. So if I look at the system info here, we can watch this. So we have 2 of them here, and if I close this, one's going to go away. So this is actively running applications. Again, Windows Explorer, if I close this, pops out. Now the Explorer shell, for instance, is still running. And the Explorer shell, even though we ended Windows Explorer, which is kind of a misnomer if you want to think of it that way. So my entire view here of my desktop and what I'm looking at here is called the Explorer shell. So when I click on the Start button, this is part of the Explorer shell. This integrated window here that I can see my files in is part of the Explorer shell. If I go to printers or paint, I guess that works too. Printers. This is also the Explorer shell. So this window, part of the Explorer shell. So everything I'm doing in here, my shell is what I'm operating in. It's called the Explorer shell. And if I look here to details, and I'm going to see explorer.exe is still running. If I end this, this will literally kick me out of my desktop, and I will have to log back in. And DWM goes along with that desktop window manager. That goes along with logging in, and that manages your windows, and Explorer is the actual windows that it's managed, one of the types of windows that it's managing. That's important for a fundamental understanding of what's actually going on inside your computer. To understand the shell that you're running, the instance, kind of the environment that you're running in. I guess environment would be another good word for it. Your shell, your environment, everything you're seeing when you click on things, what pops up, and you're going to see kind of a, that's why you see kind of a same type of bar up here with the same type of font. I click on this, it opens up, looks the same, this looks the same kind of deal. So on the background processes, these are executables mostly that have been kicked off by services. So services are kind of the instructions, and the processes that the services kick off are what's actually running in memory. And a lot of this stuff, don't get me started about Cortana, oh my gosh. A lot of this stuff you want running, you can't do a lot about most of it. The stuff is handled by the system, especially, I don't know, WMI, Windows Defender I actually want running. These VirtualBox, a lot of these you're not going to see on your system, but you can kind of see Photos. I mean, why does Photos need to be running right now? Bye-bye. But sometimes it pops right back in. So a good example of that is this completely ridiculous, annoying executable that nobody can get rid of. Cortana. Oh, look, it's back. End it again. No. Just keeps coming back. And there's nothing you can do about it. There's a lot of people complaining about this, a lot of aggravation around the internet as to why can't I get rid of this? Anyway, I digress. So CTF loader, I have no idea what that is, but a lot of these you're going to have to look through. A lot of these are self-explanatory. Edge. Why is Edge running? I don't have Edge actually running. Do I need it running? No. But that may just pop back in there too. Regardless, let's kind of approach this the same way as we approach the services. Let's learn more about this stuff before we just go ending tasks. I've been in IT for over 20 years, so I'm sort of a geek when it comes to this stuff. I know what most of these things are. The main point of this would be to sort by the CPU right here. And we can see what's kind of killing us. So for instance, I'm good right now. If I go to Chrome and I start doing things, say for instance, I don't know, we'll do YouTube. I go to YouTube and start playing a video. Notice my CPU usage, it's slamming. But this is okay. Spikes like this are fine. You got an application, it wants to kick off and uses some CPU, it kicks off, and then it comes back down. This is running, so this is going to take up some bandwidth here from the CPU. Now it should calm down a little bit. Notice we're calming down a little bit. If I go here and I open, let's see if I have a history here. I don't have enough tabs. So if you're running, 20, 30 tabs here, your constant CPU usage, your average CPU usage, just to have those tabs open doing absolutely nothing, might be 50-60% of your CPU. Then you go and start something like some application like Microsoft Word, or you go play a video game and you don't realize that 50% of your CPU is already being used for your browser, and now the application that you decide to take on is very slow. So we can close this out. So we had to close this out, and now we've gotten our CPU back. Our CPU is the processing unit, central processing unit. So this means it's the actual brain of your computer. It's taking in information, spitting out information, and the more it's bogged down with garbage information, the more you don't have resources available for the good information that you want to spew back at you, like playing a video game or doing a word processing or Excel or whatever the case you may be doing, watching a video on YouTube, whatever. You want your resources to be available for what you want to do, not all this stuff in the background that you don't care about. So again, task manager sorting by CPU, we can see here what takes up our CPU. Then we can sort by memory as well. And as an example, we're going to see the same kind of thing that we just saw. Here's our CPU spiking, that's okay. We're going to go to YouTube. Let's go to a bunch of tabs here. So we open some tabs. Now we notice we only have, what, 3 tabs. We only have 3 tabs open, and we're already at 200 meg of RAM, which isn't bad. I have, let's check here real quick. I have 8 gig assigned to this virtual machine, but I'm using 2 gig of it, so I have 6 gig free. So this 200 meg of space that Chrome is using right now is fine. However, it's not kind of a linear growth with memory. So if I say, for instance, I'm taking up 4 gig of memory and I have 8 gig, it doesn't mean that I have 50% of my speed left. That 4 gig is still doing a lot, and it's taking resources, it's hitting the CPU is doing things with it. So it's not just, hey, there's no problem, I have a bunch of memory left. What you're doing and what's eating it up matters. Also, as I leave this open, say for instance I left Chrome open and I came back tomorrow, 12 hours later, this number would be higher. So that memory will actually creep. So every once in a while you want to reboot. Every once in a while you want to close this window and reopen it. So to finish up the task manager here, there's a couple things to talk about real quick. Users, so who's actually on your machine. If you have multiple people in your house like I do, there could be multiple users logged in, and if you expand the list, the process list here for other users, you'll notice a lot of times, for instance, my kids will leave Minecraft running, or they'll leave a Chrome browser open with 20 tabs, and I look in here and it's a gig of memory and 30% CPU, 20% CPU taken up, just sitting here doing absolutely nothing from their profile. So I go in here, I hit disconnect, I disconnect the user, kick them off, and all of a sudden I get a bunch of resources back on my computer. App history, I don't care too much about. We're not doing real analytics or anything here. The last tab we'll talk about is performance. We can see where our bottlenecks are by a little bit of history here. This obviously isn't very much, but CPU activity is what? 30 seconds, 60 seconds here. Memory, 60 seconds. Right now my system's not doing so bad, but I can see where my bottlenecks are. I can see what's causing the slowdown. This whole system is only as fast as its slowest components. So if my CPU is slow, but I have 128 gigs of memory, well, guess what? That 128 gigs of memory is going to go unused. If my CPU is super fast, but I have 2 gigs of memory, then my CPU is going to sit there and say, okay, I got to wait, and your system's still going to be slow. So the idea is to understand where your bottleneck is, and you can kind of see this by your activity. If I'm always at 90%, 80% CPU just constantly, that means that's my bottleneck. If I'm always at 90%, 70% of my memory, that's my bottleneck, so on and so forth. Disk is a little tougher, but it's kind of the same idea for the start for the layman here. Same thing, if I'm constantly thrashing, if my disk is constantly thrashing, maybe I should get an SSD, a solid state drive, and run my operating system from the SSD and then have my applications on the other hard drive. That's a whole separate topic as well. We can get into that later. That covers the task manager. We'll move on to our next topic.